oh no, oh look at them, they're all the ice guys are dressed up like army dudes, and our guys look like clowns. Yeah. They're expecting us to dress like army dudes.
He's right, you know. Humor has always played a role in resistance, but when it's part of public protest, it also has a name: tactical frivolity. And there are examples dating all the way back to ancient Greece, with the play Lysistrata being considered one of them. Or hell, look at the Alexamenos Graffito, which appears to depict a Roman soldier worshipping a donkey-headed figure on a crucifix, which appears to be from the beginning of the 3rd century AD. There are even hunter-gatherer tribes who believe to have changed little in their social organization since prehistoric times, who, among other things, will use ridicule to oppose individuals trying to assume authority that goes against their norms. In Spain, people wrote lyrics for the national anthem making fun of Franco. Yankee Doodle originated as a mocking song by British soldiers during the French and Indian War. Just look at Charlie Chaplin, for example. Mockery has always been a part of resistance, but more specific to this, it has also been a tool of diffusion. And while there are other examples from more recent centuries of groups using this sort of tactic, this strategy definitely started having a resurgence and was documented a lot more starting in the 1960s and 70s. The Yippies being an offshoot of the countercultural, anti-war and free speech movements. They were known for their politically themed pranks. They ran a pig named Pegasus J. Pig, or Pegasus the Immortal, for president. Dropped money on the stock exchange floor. They tried to levitate the Pentagon with chants and stuff to exorcise the evil from within. They did get arrested for that. Being silly. And were at one point referred to as the Groucho Marxists. And this, of course, was around the same time as the flower power movement, where you get photos like these of people offering flowers to members of the police and military, and a very poignant image of de-escalation. This sort of tactic was also used during the Iranian Revolution. So one of the first groups that would actually be described as using tactical frivolity, because that term was coined in the 80s or 90s, was the Orange Alternative, a movement in Poland in the 1980s. They dressed up as elves or dwarves a lot, which is also imagery that they would use to point out where the government would paint over anti-government slogans, etc., and has been described as one of the most, quote, influential of the Solidarity factions that helps the movement against the regime prevail, in large part because of how much international attention their comedic happenings received. Because remember, protest is largely about attention. In the 90s in the UK, a couple of groups popped up, including Reclaim the Streets, or RTS, that would stage parties in the middle of roadways. And I can't possibly list every movement or group that has used tactical frivolity, but as to the clown's description, there's actually a group that kind of used this tactic specifically in the early 2000s called the Clandestine Insurgent Rebel Clown Army, aka Circa or Clown Army. In fact, I connected with a former member on one of my lives a while back. It was an anti-authoritarian left-wing activist group in the UK that used clowning and non-violent tactics as part of their demonstrations. The goal wasn't just mockery, but it was active de-escalation while sending a message. Because it's very hard to vilify people who are very clearly acting silly. And the more silly the arresters look. Because what do you mean you were afraid of a bunch of clowns or blow up frogs? Last summer, I documented organizers that blockaded and prevented City HQ employees from getting to work for hours at a time, multiple times a week for months. For many of these direct actions, they made sure to bring the comedy by dressing up as orcas or Costco hot dogs, even Chapel Roan once, as they danced and sang Hot to Go on repeat. The point was to bring attention to these activities and thus attention to their goal, keeping the energy up for participants who were doing this week after week, to ridicule their targets and dissipate a lot of the tension that could otherwise become dangerous. So do blow up frogs, clown makeup, and other silly costumes and activities constitute real resistance? Are they serious tactics? Yes. To quote the poet Toy Derricott, joy is an act of resistance. There is absolutely strategy and power in tactical frivolity. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise.